chills run up and down my spine. Aladdin's lamp is mine. The dream I dreamed was not denied me. Just one look and then I knew that all I longed for long ago was you.
I have eyes for me to give you dirty looks. I have words that do not come from children's books. I've a trick with a knife I'm learning to do, but everything I've got belongs to you. I've a powerful anesthesia in my fist, and the perfect wrist to give your neck a twist. Hammerlock holds, I've mastered a few, but everything I've got belongs to you. Share and share, share alike. You get struck each time I strike. Me for you, you for me. I'll give you plenty of nothing. I'm not yours for better, but for worse. And I've learned to give the well-known witch's curse. I've a terrible tongue and a temper for two, but everything I've got belongs to you. Children's books. I've a trick with a knife I'm learning to do, but everything I've got belongs to you. I've a powerful anesthesia in my fist, and the perfect wrist to give your neck a twist. Hammerlock hold, I've mastered a few, but everything I've got belongs to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to call the regular monthly meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission to order for Wednesday, June 24th, 2015. If you'd all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Ms. McGill, would you call roll, please?
Chair Wiscombe?
Here.
Longstreet? Here. Clark? Here. Rincon? Here. French, Heaton, and Intern Rodriguez are not present.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGill. Ms. Zachary, changes to the agenda?
No.
Okay, no changes to the agenda. And written communications, we've just received a packet here so I'll put that on the record by Karen Van Hoek, which is for an item that's not on our agenda. So we're going to move on to public comment, and any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for discussion before the commission. The total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. We have over 15 speaker slips here for public comment on items not on the agenda. So I'd like to try to limit you all to 1 minute of comment since we have 15 minutes for public comment. And please try to stay as close to that as possible. I'll give you a little bit of latitude, but we have a lot of public comment and we have a lot of other agenda items to get through. So the first speaker, Sue Miller. If you come on, you have to come up to the podium. Sorry, and just the mic is on. Just pull it close to you so everyone can hear you, please. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I've been retired for a number of years, and tennis is my game. I love it very much, and I have a group of women. And every Wednesday morning, we like to play tennis. And we used to play at Las Positas. And it was so easy and so pleasant. We don't need to have new bathrooms. We don't need to have a fencing entrance. We don't need to have paved parking. We don't need to play at night. We don't need the lights on at night. We just want to have a place that's accessible and we can get on the courts easily and play. And ever since it's been taken away from us, it has been a nightmare of trying to play there. Even if you set up a time, we go there and we find out that there are other people playing there. And that, oh, sorry, we have this league play going. And it's just, so our group is kind of breaking up, and I've had to get into my car, get on the freeway, and try and find some other court, and then we get to that court, and that's taken. Everything has gotten so much more complicated. And really this great joy of this wonderful game has been taken from me, along with Las Positas. That's all.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker is, if you please not refrain from clapping, please, at the end of a speaker. I'd really appreciate it. Next speaker is John Milton, and it'll be followed by David Boone.
Hello, Commissioners. I've played tennis for many years at Las Positas courts. It is clear to me that they're trying to make a private tennis club out of these courts. In fact, a meeting I went to a few months after they took over, the then CEO stated that they based their new rates on interviewing the various private tennis clubs in this area. As the previous speaker mentioned, public players basically are bare bones as far as wanting their facilities to just be tennis courts and hopefully restrooms. The proposed changes that Elings is trying to make into this private tennis club include clubhouse, pro shop, yoga studio, snack bar, and even clay tennis courts were mentioned at one point. So this is clearly their objective is to turn this into a little profit center. Elings tends to get private concerns to use their facilities, and there's some kind of financial arrangement that they have with these private concerns. And basically they have a handful of members right now. There's no way they could fund all this change in these tennis courts with a handful of members. They seem to be falling back on rich donors, but that's obviously not keeping to the spirit of public tennis.
If you could wind up, please.
Okay, well, I've said what I came to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're on to David Boone, who'll be followed by Kristen McAllister.
Hello, my name is David Boone, and I'm here today to ask the Commission to look into the The access at Ellings Park for the general public, it has been reduced significantly by the cost that they're burden that they're putting upon the public to play there, especially the children. As the park commission, that should be one of your main concerns, to keep access to the parks for all our children for play and exercise. I think that's what the parks were made for, and I think that's what's lacking here. And if you could help us out and with some free structures and possibly better access to the courts, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Kristen McAllister will be followed by, Susie Briggs is donating her time. Okay, I got to fix that. Will be followed by Steve Bellamy.
I moved here in 1991, and Los Positos was the favorite place for me to go and play tennis. And now, since it's been taken over by the foundation, it's like I go by there many times, and there's like nobody there. I know you've heard everybody else say it's hard to get in, to find a court. And I'd just like you to return the courts to public access so that we can meet our friends again on the tennis court. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Steve Bellamy, be followed by Gladys Robinson.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your attention. I know that one of the responsibilities of the Commission is to review the annual budgets of the Parks and Recreation Department. So I ask you to help me understand one particular point. We've heard repeatedly over the last few years that the Parks and Recreation Department is suffering extreme, dire budgetary constraints. And they had to give away Las Positas, and now they're having to give away the golf club, the golf course. But when I look at the city financials, I see that the salaries and benefits paid to Parks and Recreation employees has increased by $3.5 million over this same period. I just don't understand why we have to give away our parks, these precious treasures that we hold in trust for future generations, whilst at the same time, or because of, having to pay higher salaries and benefits to city employees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Gladys Robinson is followed by Abe Mira.
Hello. I've been a resident of Santa Barbara for 29 years, and have played on all the public courts, especially at Las Positas. Plans are that the hitting wall is going to be eradicated, and to me that was one of the most important parts of going down to the courts. Giving the park to Ellings has broken up not only a community of tennis players, but long-time friendships. I feel that the facility should be returned to the city and make it accessible to the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, Abe Mira is followed by Gerard Carrillo.
Good afternoon, and I just wanted to stop by at the courts a few weeks ago, and there was nobody there, and I really miss our tennis family over there, you know, and even if we could afford what they want us to pay, there's nobody there, and I just want you to help us to recover this beautiful tennis courts that we had all these years, which belongs to the taxpayer. And I really deeply want to ask you again to help us to get it back to the city so we can all go back there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, Gerard Carrillo will be followed by Edwin Taylor.
Hi. The users of the tennis courts who have played at Las Positas for many years really don't want a development which results in higher court fees. This is evidenced by the drop in attendance at the courts. Before Ellings received them, the parking lot was normally well filled, particularly in the mornings. Now driving by, it's usually empty. Instead of using Las Positas courts, the tennis players are driving all over Santa Barbara and Goleta, increasing both the traffic, air pollution, and destroying what was just a real nice community. Let me quantify a little bit the statements about driving all over Santa Barbara. In my case, for example, what was a 1 mile drive to the tennis courts now is like a 10-mile drive. Round trip, it becomes 20. The difference in driving for me in a year is 2,700 miles. And that's 150 car trips. Then that's added, and that's usually in the morning during the rush hours. The courts, Las Positas had normally roughly 40 people. You can verify those numbers in the mornings playing. 5 courts, four people on a court at a time, and 2 shifts. And that ends up being, and those people no longer are playing there. So that adds up to like 6,000 car trips on the freeway in the mornings, and that's approximately 100,000 miles a year extra are involved in the morning trips. That's at the worst time.
If you could wind up, please.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
I doubt these effects to Santa Barbara and the tennis community and its citizens were really taken into account in giving the Las Positas courts to Ellings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Edwin Taylor is followed by David Niles.
My name is Edwin Taylor. I've lived in Santa Barbara for almost 30 years. First started playing tennis at Las Positas in 1990. We all know each other here, and there's a group of almost 500 that are behind us, that are since November of 2010 what has happened, how we got to this point here. In November 2010, as you probably still remember, on the consent calendar, not open to the general public, but on a consent vote with no discussion, those courts, public courts, were privatized. They were basically given to Ellings. Ellings turned around immediately and subcontracted out those tennis courts to a commercial operation, a for-profit commercial operation, with which Ellings would supposedly, if there were any profits, get part of those profits. That's where we are today. And I won't take up any more of your time, except that I would like the Commission and the Parks and Recreation Department and the City Council to just stand back and say, okay, maybe we didn't treat the public right. Maybe we didn't embrace them. Maybe we didn't tell them what was going on. Most of the tennis players, all that I know, did not know about that vote, that consent calendar vote. It's like a year or so later, it surfaced, well, what is happening here? These are no longer public courts, they're private courts. And I think it's an abomination. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Okay, David Niles, is Susie Briggs present? Okay, great. You're donating your time to David, correct? Okay, so Mr. Niles, I can give you 2 minutes.
I'll try to be as quick as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is David Niles. I'm a local long-term resident, long-term user of Las Positas Park, landscape architect, landscape contractor, and small business owner, and someone who believes in public parks and the opportunity it provides the working-class families of our community. The Las Positas Tennis Group is here today to ask the Parks and Rec Commission to protect the public interest at our public park and return Las Positas to the people. More importantly, a recent planning determination in regard to Ellings' proposed development at the tennis facility will result in the Parks and Rec Commission, that's you all, in being one of the major final approvals for their proposed development. The Las Positas Tennis Group believes the Commission should be aware of the following issues when making determinations and decisions about the proposed development of our public park, and we respectfully are requesting that the Parks and Recreation Commission recommend this controversial project to the Planning Commission and or the City Council for the additional review and approval. Currently, we believe Ellings to be in default of the lease agreement, and you have a letter in your possession from our attorney detailing the activities that has caused this default. As you can see here, there's an oak tree on site that's fallen down, and it's a major issue with a lot of people that use the park. In summary, the default was caused by unauthorized destruction of city property and unauthorized construction and grading, which has left dangerous conditions and has harmed the sensitive environment, including these oak trees. The default of the lease complicates Eling's path forward, and these points are covered in the letter we've submitted to you documenting this default problem. Furthermore, Eling's proposed development includes elements that are not allowed in the Parks and Rec subcategory sports facility. We also submitted a letter from our attorney detailing the proposed elements in question. They're trying to build a meeting room over the hitting wall, and meeting rooms, only minor buildings are allowed in Parks and Rec sports facilities. No meeting rooms are allowed at all for anything. In summary, no meeting rooms of any size are allowed in this facility, and the proposed meeting room displaces the hitting wall, a highly used element devoted to public tennis. Please recognize and understand the default of the lease agreement and the disallowed, obtuse development proposed for this small park. The Las Positas Tennis Group sees the Parks and Rec Commission as the protector of our public parks, and we're asking you today to hear our voice to help us regain this valuable asset. The longstanding community of Las Positas parkgoers has been destroyed, and this is why we are requesting your assistance and recommendation to protect our public parks and to return Las Positas to the people who have supported and cherished this public space for decades. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker is Karen Van Hoek. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Harriet Sharp, are you in the room, Harriet? Okay, and you're donating your time? Okay, and Ginger Peterson? Okay. And Gordon Jennings? And Nancy Savage? And Herb Fight? Okay. Okay, great. So that's... can't count today, sorry. 6 minutes, I guess.
Is there any chance that we can get a formal presentation? You know, we had asked for equal time with Elings Park to give our presentation over how this park, you can see that there has definitely been, you know, a lot of community that's been affected by this. And we would really like to be able to give a formal presentation, PowerPoint presentation, where we can, you know, show all this data, because there's a lot of data to be shown.
Not, excuse me, not at this meeting, because you're speaking to an item that's
that,
not
but
on
if
the
we,
agenda.
If there's possibility we could get it on the agenda at some future point, we would really appreciate it.
Okay.
Especially because this is going to be coming up before you guys, and there's a lot of data that needs to be made public.
Okay, great. Duly noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our public tennis facility, the Las Positas, where many of us played, and you can see that there's a lot of community involvement, was basically taken from us and handed to the private entity, Elings Park, for $1 a year. Now they have a private academy running the facility with whom they split profits. The $8 a day fee, which Elings keeps claiming is the same as the city's day pass, is misleading. Children under 18 play free under the city. Players that pay these fees are infrequent players, such as someone's guest from out of town or for the weekend. If you played 3 times weekly at $8 a day, that would be $1,250 a year. Not terribly affordable, especially for a 10-year-old. Annual adult passes have increased 400% under Elings Park management. Now, if you want an annual pass for your child, it's $250 a year. And their camps and clinics are very pricey, and you have that information all available to you in the annual report that they provided. An entire community of tennis players has been disbanded due to Elings Park management. Over 400 people have signed our online petition to return the courts to the public. You can check out the petition on LasPositasTennis.com, and I've printed off some of the comments for you guys to look at. Basically, there was no public notification or input before this transfer took place. It was voted away in a simple calendar consent vote. I have reviewed the videos. The City Council didn't even have any discussion about the matter. There was no independent financial analysis to assess whether this lease of a multi-million-dollar facility was financially responsible and in the best interest of the public. There was no bidding involved. Data that we have reviewed, and we have the actual court monitoring reports, have clearly show, if you look at the reports, Las Positas, from Richard, he was monitoring it, clearly had the most annual passes and daily passes of either Pershing Park or Muni. And this may have been a moneymaker for the city. We tried to get the data from Nancy Rapp, but she told us all the facilities are bunched together, so they couldn't analyze whether this was actually a money-making facility. Now the city is in, the use is under the Elings is in stark contrast to what it used to be. They themselves report very few members, and at any given time, the courts are usually vacant now. The city is not monitoring the lease agreement they have with Elings. Elings has had illegal banners not allowed in the city. We had to press the city to repeatedly to have them removed. They now have a sign posted at the facility calling the facility Elings Park Tennis Facility. The lease calls for a city council vote to change the name of the facility. Most seriously, they have done non-permitted or inspected construction, including cutting into the hillside, which has destroyed several oak trees. 3 of them are currently dying. 1 has already fallen down. And they did an illegal, non-inspected retaining wall. And there's drop-offs here without any barriers. It's a very dangerous situation over there. Our attorney's letter, which you have possession of, dated June 3rd, and it states that such a default of the lease should warrant immediately revocation of the lease, and that should be done immediately. Their 3,600 square foot structure they propose now with student lounge, offices, exercise room, and cafe or food prep area for the academy goers. This size building is not permitted under Zone PR category sports facility, which allows no meeting-sized rooms or significant buildings of any kind, only small ancillary structures like the restrooms and storage shed that are currently there. Please see, I've also included our attorney's letter of June 22nd that went to the ABR addressing this. At any rate, I'll just end by saying you can see that this is a beloved tennis facility, and we would really, really appreciate your help in getting it back to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, and our final speaker is Kathy Mays.
In closing, I would just like to argue. No. Oh, right. It's not a trial.
Could you pull the mic close to you, please,
sure.
Ms. Mays? Thank you.
Sure. For many years, I played at Las Positas at least twice a week, and mostly at night during the mix and match program that was offered there. When the park was taken over, that ended, obviously, which it was it's an incredible program. It moved to Pershing, but it's sort of never been the same because it doesn't attract the same kind of people or as many people as it did at Las Positas as it does at Pershing. Because with Las Positas, you got people coming from south of the city and Goleta and, all around there. So you really attracted a lot of people and a lot of really good tennis players and made it really fun. Now, since it was taken over, I hardly ever play there because the program stopped. And there really aren't any new programs that are operating. They've said for years that they were going to have these mixers and sort of tennis clinics and things like that. But I've gone a couple of times through the last probably 5 years. My husband went once, and a couple of friends of mine went on a Wednesday night, and nothing. And there's still nothing going, which is really too bad. Because these courts are the most beautiful courts in the whole city, and they were once extremely active, and everybody loved them, and it was just the best place to play in the whole city. And now when I'm there, the courts are virtually unused, except for like one group that plays on Saturday, which I'm a part of, and it is like having our own private courts. I mean, it is like our own private club, I have to say, which is very nice for us, but it's not really nice for the people who can't afford, the $500 or the $250 for their children. And this really was a city park, and I just think it should be turned back. And also, I just said give the public a chance for us to do some fundraising to fix up the buildings that are there and make them nice. I think a lot of people would be willing to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. My mic wasn't on. Thank you all for coming, and I'm closing public comment. And I don't believe we have a youth council report. So I'll move on to commissioner committee assignment reports, and we'll just go down the line. Ms. Longstreet.
This month I attended the Park Foundation meeting. We are planning for the 90-plus birthday party, which will take place in October. The Neighborhood Advisory Council met this month, and one of the issues that Mr. Rincon brought up that I think was a good issue we need to address at that level is a stop sign by our pocket park, our new pocket park. So we'll be looking at that. On the 8th, I attended with other members of the commission the local coastal plan update. We had a subcommittee meeting with the Planning Commission and the Harbor Commission representatives. And last night, I attended yesterday afternoon, the Franceschi House meeting at City Council.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rincon.
Let's see, busy month. We had the Golf Options Committee meeting number 2, and we came to some conclusions there. Also, the advisories group workshop, I guess we were all kind of need to attend those frequently, at least once a year, to brush up on our Brown Act. I attended the Water Commission meeting, and they expressed a lot of gratitude to Parks and Rec and being very proactive in conserving water. The Neighborhood Advisory Council, Ms. Longstreet mentioned, and yes, we do need a stop sign next to our pocket park. And then I guess we just finished up our joint Parks and Rec and JAC meeting to kind of come to a conclusion on the golf course.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Clark?
This month I also attended the joint meeting between the Parks and Rec Commission and the Golf Advisory Committee, which was held to discuss options relating to the future operation of the Santa Barbara Municipal Golf Course. I also attended the Park Foundation Board meeting, which BB has already covered.
Thank you. Whoever said it was a busy month, yes, it was. On May 29th, I attended the Bren School presentation on sea level rise as part of the local coastal plan update subcommittee. On Monday, June 1st and Tuesday, June 16th, I attended both city council meetings where the Parks and Recreation budgets were discussed, and I spoke on behalf of our commission's departmental recommendations. On Wednesday, June 3rd, Mr. Rincon has already reported on the Golf Operating Options Subcommittee meeting. We did finalize our operating model recommendations to the Golf Advisory Committee and Commission for the joint meeting on the 15th. And on Thursday, June 4th, I attended the regular Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting where we made site visits and recommendations, and the committee made recommendations for the tree removal applications on the agenda. On Monday, June 8th, with Ms. Longstreet, I attended the local coastal plan subcommittee joint meeting. And we discussed, really the focus was environmentally sensitive habitat areas. On Wednesday the 10th, I attended, and Mr. Rincon attended, the Parks and Rec Department's annual awards breakfast, always my most favorite event of the year. And just a special congratulations to all the award winners and congratulations to the department for a very successful year. It's really fun event to have everyone there, almost everyone there, and it was a great, great time. I also attended the meeting at the Muni Tennis Facility to view and hear a discussion about conceptual plans for the proposed play area and other improvements. And that meeting was fairly well attended by a lot of people that live in the area, and they had some very valuable comments to make. And on Tuesday, the June 16th, I also attended the City Council meeting to speak on behalf of the Commission's recommendation to deny the appeal to remove the street tree at 3740 Pescadero Drive. And on Wednesday, the 17th, I attended the Park Foundation board meeting, and Ms. Longstreet's already reported on that. So all in all, it was a busy month. Okay. We're moving on to commission and staff communications. Ms. Zachary, you have anything does anyone have any questions on any of the items? No? Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item number 1, summary of council actions. Did you have any comments on those, Ms. Zachary? No. Okay, any questions? Okay. Agenda item number 2 is approval of the minutes from the regular commission meeting on Wednesday, May 27th.
I'm move for approval.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the Street Tree Advisory Committee items. Any action of the Parks and Recreation Commission made pursuant to Municipal Code Chapter 1524, Preservation of Trees, may be appealed to City Council within 10 days. And we're on to item 3A1 at 113 Los Ondas. And Mr. Downey.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, 113 Los Ondas has a Melaleuca quinquenerva tree. It was placed directly between 2 driveway aprons. It's lifting both driveway aprons, the driveway on both residences has damaged street. The applicant is concerned about the future of his driveway. He has plans to eventually replace the driveway, and his insurance company is concerned about future damage if the tree remains in place. The committee went out to the site and looked at the situation, determined that under current guidelines it's not consistent with placement under our street tree master plan guidelines. Their recommendation is to approve the removal on the condition that a designated Chinese elm is planted elsewhere along the property.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Okay, we do have the applicant here to speak. I'll just open it up to the commission first. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Downey? Okay. Mr. Bell, Mr. Michael Bell, welcome.
I don't have too much to add to. You all have been out to see it, and you have the pictures. I've since spoken to my contractor, and he said that unless the repair is done to the sidewalk, that he won't trouble himself with trying to put in a new driveway. And you've seen the pictures. My driveway is destroyed. It's also it's so much bigger than the actual space it was planted in. It is an impediment to backing out and being able to see. And I've got 2 small children right next door to me, and I have an older woman that's 100 years old, literally, that walks down that street with her walker, and I fear for her tripping on that damaged sidewalk. I have spoken to the Public Works Supervisor. His name is Jeff Brent. I have his phone number if anyone would like it. And he said that he would support the removal of the tree and the repair of the sidewalk. And I'd have no objection if you wanted to put another tree somewhere else in front of my house, but just not another one of those. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. Appreciate it. Okay, we're closing public comment, and it's back to the commission for discussion or motion.
I'd like to make a motion to conditionally approve the removal of the Melaleuca quinquenerva at 113 Los Ondas on the condition that the applicant replace the tree with a what was it they were going to use?
Chinese elm.
A Chinese elm.
I second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. And now we're moving on to item 3B1, 425 Loma Alta Drive. And we also have a speaker for this item. So Mr. Downey will give his presentation, then we'll take any questions from the commission, and then we'll open it up to the applicant to speak, and then it'll be back to the commission. Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, 425 Loma Alta Drive has two twisted junipers as street trees. They're in failing condition. They're starting to decline, and they're not very aesthetically pleasing. The applicant is concerned about the look of their home. Frequently, they get graffiti on the wall, and they're trying to upgrade the property to improve the situation. The appearance of the trees and the tagging is not aesthetically pleasing. So their desire is to, in fact, they have installed some landscaping that will drape down that wall to help with the graffiti, and in addition to that, the trees aren't very aesthetically pleasing, so they'd like to get those removed. Unfortunately, given the space that's available, there isn't space currently for replacement trees. If at a point in the future when a project comes through to widen those sidewalks, there will be space in the future for trees, but there isn't space currently for replacement trees. The committee visited the site and concurs that the trees are not doing well, and removal of the trees would not be an impact on the neighborhood. The recommendation is to approve the removals.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'll open it up to the commission for any questions. Ms.
I have a
Longstreet?
question.
Yes.
Those two trees there's two more down, right? That are in about the same condition. Are they up for removal also, because they really are in about the same dire shape?
Chair Wiscombe, Commissioner Longstreet, we're watching those trees, and if they get to the point where they either become dangerous or they die, the city will move forward with removing those trees, but there's no immediate plans at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Okay, so I'll open it up for public comment, and we have the applicant here, Karen Della Barca. Welcome.
First, I want to thank Mr. Downey, yourself, and the committee for talking to me and then coming out to our place. We are the owners of what is called in the neighborhood the graffiti wall. We have changed the landscaping and planted rosemary along the length, and we're also about to paint that a neutral color, though that won't, we will undoubtedly have to keep painting over that for a little while till the rosemary takes over. I just support the recommendation that's made. There's no way that we can even water these trees. They've grown completely over the wells that they were in, and the sidewalk's extremely narrow. And I'm here to answer any further questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time to come down and speak. Okay. Public comments closed, and it's back to the commission for any further questions or discussion or a motion.
I would make a motion to concur with the recommendation of the Street Tree Advisory Committee for the removal of the trees at 425 Loma Alta.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. And now we're on to item 3C1 at 1585 Overlook Lane. Mr. Downey.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, 1585 Overlook Lane has a very mature Monterey pine that is also starting to decline. The tree is infested with pine bark beetles and eventually will die as a result of that. The committee evaluated the situation and noted that the applicant desires to plant a replacement tree. Given that the tree is on its way out and probably will die soon, the committee recommends that the commission approve the removal on the condition they provide the proposed replacement tree.
Okay, thank you. No public comment on this, so it's to the commission for any questions, discussion, or a motion.
Mr. Downey, isn't there an injection that you can give pine trees to eradicate the pine bark beetles? I think you used it on the stone pines, or is that just preventative?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Clark, there is an injection method that could be utilized to help trees fend off attacks from pine bark beetles. The beetles still attack, and unless the tree has enough energy to assist with that fighting off of the beetles are successful in attacking the tree. The other issue is when the application is made at the application site, there has to be an application every 6 inches around the trunk of the tree. And at the location of the application site, the application itself actually kills part of the cambium, which is the layer that transports the nutrients up the tree. If the beetles have tunneled far enough in the tree, the application itself could be the final death nail for the tree. So when the tree is in this kind of condition, it's beyond that treatment point.
Any other? Yes, Ms. Longstreet?
I would just make a motion that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory recommendation to remove the Monterey pine at 1585 Overlook Lane and replace it with a jacaranda in it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. I think the Street Tree Advisory Committee just said replace it with a minimum 15-gallon tree. Is that acceptable to you, Ms. Longstreet?
That's acceptable. I was reading the applicant's letter, which said
Right.
considering a jacaranda.
Right. Okay.
Any tree, 15-gallon trees.
Okay. Is the seconder of the motion okay with the more general?
We have.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a.
I didn't know that you had an application to speak publicly. I own the house, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to.
Oh. Okay. I don't think we do at this time. Thank you. Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. We are going to skip agenda item 4 at this time because we're waiting for Mr. Casey to arrive, our city administrator. Is that correct, Ms. Zachary?
Chair Wiscombe, if I could make a suggestion, since he may arrive fairly soon, that you consider taking the junior golf item ahead of the vegetative fuels and defensible space, since it might be a shorter item and it might time more easily with Mr. Casey coming to the meeting.
Okay.
If that's okay
Yes.
with
Okay. But I also, now I see Mr. Woodard's just arrived, so I'm going to suggest that we take, skipping all over here, that we take agenda item number 10 next. So since he's here, and agenda item number 10 is the Gulf Advisory Committee interviews and appointment. And we have one other application. So we did hear from Mr. Sim last meeting, and now Mr. Woodard is here to apply. So if you'd like to step up and...
To the mic?
Yes, thank you. And welcome, and thank you for applying. And tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be on the Gulf Advisory Committee.
Well,
Introduce yourself first. Yeah.
I'm Michael Woodard, and I don't know, I've been living in Santa Barbara all my life, and got the bug to play golf, I don't know, probably 8-10 years ago, and have been a fairly frequent player there at Muni. I sit on the board of the Santa Barbara Men's Club, and I've been doing that for about 3 years. I've been a marshal there for probably the last 5 years, 6 years maybe, and I don't know, there's a position open, and there's a lot to be done, and I think I could be of help. You know, I'm kind of I'm open-minded, and I like to think outside of the box, and I don't think there's one fix, one cure for everything that is going on there, and I'm pretty up to date on the current issues with money and costs and everything else, and I think I can help.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions for Mr. Woodard? Your principal course of play is Muni.
That is my principal course of play.
Okay.
I try and get 100 rounds a year, and I would venture to say that 75 of them are there.
So you know the course inside and out and intimately.
More areas than I choose to know.
I was in a few the other day that Mr. Downey would be. Took down a few, close to a few limbs that I probably should. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So it's back to the commission.
Is that it? I'm gone?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Appreciate your time.
You might want to stick around and see what. We have 2 applicants, so if you want to stay, you're welcome to.
Thank you.
So
I'd make a motion.
Okay.
I would make a motion to appoint Mr. Woodard, and I base that on the fact that it is his home club, and our other applicant didn't seem to play at our club as regularly, so wasn't as familiar with the current issues.
Okay.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. Welcome to the Golf Advisory Committee, Mr. Woodard. Yeah. Okay, and thank you for applying. Okay, I guess we're going to move to agenda item number 4 now, because Mr. Casey, our city administrator, is here. Welcome, Mr. Casey. We're just skipping all over the place today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, I'm Paul Casey, City Administrator. I wanted to come and give the Commission an update on the plans of having to replace Nancy Rapp. You know, Nancy is retiring, and we're sorry to see her go. Nancy has had a wonderful career with the city. She's been an outstanding Parks and Recreation Director. I've really enjoyed working with her as a coworker and as a friend, and I will miss her, but I wish her well, and congratulations. But life goes on, and we need a Parks and Recreation Director, so that's it. Goodbye, Nancy.
Can we all pout now?
Exactly.
Can we have a moment of pouting?
2 seconds, but then we got to regroup. So I just want to let you know what my process is going to be for filling the position. As the city administrator, the city charter empowers me to hire department heads and the staff in that regard. I do have to go to city council to confirm my decision at the end of the process, but primarily it's my process to fill. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to meet with staff from the Parks and Recreation Department. I'm meeting individually with the managers and other kind of key leadership staff within the department to get their perspective, on how the department's doing, what the future and challenges look like for the department, and what key qualities and characteristics they would like to see in the next Parks and Recreation Director. And then I'm also going to hold a couple of open sessions with the staff to get their input as well. And so I'm in the process of doing that. That will help formulate in my mind what I think I need to be looking for as I start a recruitment. I expect to do an open recruitment for this position. It's a department head position, and I would like to do that. Fully expect, or not expect, but be fully open to internal candidates applying as well. People should not interpret an open recruitment that I wouldn't be interested in an internal candidate. I want see what all my options are before I make a decision. The process will probably take 3 to 5 months to complete, which will go beyond when Ms. Rapp retires, and so I will likely make an interim appointment of an interim director, but I'll wait to do that until we get closer to her retirement date. And we'll do a brochure, we'll do a recruitment, we'll do a national recruitment, but primarily we'll focus on the state of California. I think it's realistic to get movement at this level of position within the state of California, and I think it helps to have California experience in a Parks and Recreation director and with some of the issues that this position deals with. So we'll do that. We do a recruitment, we'll get candidates, we'll do an interview panel to kind of narrow down, and then I'll do follow-up kind of one-on-one interviews with kind of the key top selected folks. One of the things I would today like to ask, any input or guidance to me that you have on key issues or characteristics to be thinking about in the director. I'd love to get your input in that regard. I'd also love to get either the chair or another representative from the commission to sit on the interview panel. I think getting a commission perspective on the candidates would be very helpful to me as we kind of narrow down that selection process. So those are my reasons for being here. Happy to answer any questions and to get any feedback you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Appreciate the you coming here and giving us an idea of what the process is going to involve. So I'll just open it up to the commission. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Casey or comments? No. Ms. Longstreet?
I would just say, having participated the last time we did this, that it is better to focus on California. I think we had several candidates from places like Wisconsin who were shocked at what it takes to live in California, and it was a futile effort. So I would emphasize California.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Clark?
I also appreciate the fact that you're going to look mostly at California for that experience, and I appreciate the fact that you're going to be looking at internal candidates as well. I think coming from an outside place, it's going to take someone years to get to any kind of level of knowledge that would help them function effectively.
Mr. Rincon, do you have anything? No. Okay.
One more thing I think about our city that is really important is the fact that we have beachfront. Our Parks and Rec director is in charge of many, many different aspects, from mountain activities and trails all the way to the beaches. And we have urban and open space, and it's quite a handful. It isn't just a simple city park. I think that the amount of open space we have and the amount of engagement our community has, as we saw a little earlier today, is big. So, and I'm glad to see you're looking both internally and externally.
I agree with the comments that have been made. I think one thing that we need to look at is, our permitting process here in California, and it's a big one. And I think Ms. Longstreet had a very good point on the different types of parks and recreation facilities we have in different areas. We're going to hear a presentation on defensible space for fire, and then we've got the Cabrillo Bathhouse coming up for renovation. We're going to hear a report on that. So there's a huge variety, and obviously Ms. Rapp has done a fantastic job steering the ship through some difficult times. I think budget is very important, and how to manage that. That's always been a key issue since I've been on the commission. Where do we spend the funds that are allocated from the general fund to the Parks and Rec department, and how do we get the most out of those? And I think staff has done a remarkable job with that, and I think that's whoever gets the job has to have the qualities that take care of that. I'm pleased that we're also looking internally, and I'm very pleased that you're accepting staff input, because these, that's important. Happy people work hard, and it's I think very important to have the input from the staff on the position. So I hope that helps you, and thank you, Mr. Casey, for coming and.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for
speaking
fitting me
with
in.
us.
We'll give you updates as the process keeps going along so that you stay informed. And when the interview panel time comes, I'll look to the chair to either have her sit on the panel or have someone else. But I appreciate your input.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, do we, Ms. Zachary, are we? Well, I know you're there now, but are
I
we
would-
doing 6 before 5, or should we just go down the
I
line
would
now?
say at this point, let's just follow the agenda.
Okay. So we're on to agenda item number 5, Defensible Space and Vegetative Fuels Program.
And fellow commissioners, I'm here today to conduct a informative meeting on, I'm Steve Biddle. I'm a park supervisor. Have the privilege of overseeing beaches, turf, and open space in the city of Santa Barbara for the Parks Division. So today's presentation is on defensible space and vegetative fuels program and how we run that and what it does. So we run our defensible space and vegetative fuels program underneath the Wildland Fire Plan. And the purpose of the Wildland Fire Plan that we carry out is to reduce and mitigate potential loss of life, property, natural resources due to wildland fires. As we all know, that's a very serious issue in Santa Barbara and has been. The plan was put together in 1992. It was adopted by the City Council in 1993, and it continues to this date underneath the Fire Department. The Parks Division works underneath the Vegetative Fuels Management Plan within the city lands that we take care of. Defensible space and vegetative fuels. The Parks Division, which we work with, is responsible for 16 open space properties, parks, totaling 1,183 acres. It's quite a bit. Our primary and most important focus is defensible space, and that consists of clearing flammable ground vegetation and brush in the open space, 30 to 150 feet from the property lines of adjacent homes and properties. That number varies because we have different zones of fire risk within the city. So there's a coastal zone, coastal interior, foothill zone, and extreme foothill zone, and each of them has their own conditions that we work within as it's laid out within the Wildland Fire Plan. The other part of that is vegetative fuels, and vegetative fuels is outside of the defensible space, anywhere within that park property or property. So within that part, we do the same type of work where we do clearing, remove vegetation and brush and vegetative work, but it's in a more limited and focused area throughout the entire property. Our annual vegetative fuels work is started in April. It may vary slightly from the time it starts, but it's always completed in the first week of June, and that's when the worst of the fire season is. In 2015 fiscal year, we were contracted out. We were allotted $70,000 to contractors. That gave us 1,166 man-hours in the field that we used within those 16 properties. Park staff contributed just slightly over 300 hours within those same areas, so it's a dual effort. We also work in Parma Park, and the Parma Family Trust provided $12,000 for vegetative fuels and defensible space work within that park, and that provided 320 contracted man-hours. In 2014, as an example, we had $50,000 that was allotted as a savings from labor, and we were allowed to use that for additional vegetative fuels work. It was specifically targeted for 4 high-risk areas that needed extra attention that year. So from time to time, that happens. This is an example of each of our parks within that we work with has what we call a defensible space and vegetative fuels map. So as you can see, there's a large yellow area that's the total boundary of that property. This happens to be Franceschi Park. There's upper and lower. Within the park boundary and along the edges are the blue areas. The blue areas denote defensible space. Those are the ones that we focus on the highest priority, are going to get a lot of attention. We take a lot more time and effort to make sure that those structures and residences are protected along the edges as far as flammable materials. This is an example that I have of defensible space and vegetative fuels work. So this is Upper Franceschi Park. We use a parks field mower. We take the annual grasses and weeds and mow them down. You can see in the back and to the right, those are areas that are actually within our defensible space area. So we've taken the grasses down to reduce the rapid fire spread in that area. Underneath the trees, we pick up the eucalyptus litter and downed branches that accumulate. They're kind of messy from time to time, and that's how we reduce that area. To the left of that slide, we transition down into the interior of the park, and it's just more of a vegetative fuels where we go through and with the contractor and park staff and thin and remove vegetation, maybe some dead materials, and the trees down in there are raised to a 6-foot height. This is an example of Lower Franceschi Park where we have defensible space work. You can see the home and the property adjacent to the park. This is one of the pathways that leads off of a street. This is an area that we work with a contractor in. We weed whip the grasses in here. To the right and the back are some native plants. There's some sages and coyote bush, oak trees, where we try and be especially sensitive to native plants when we can, and either leave or reduce them if we have to. This is Douglas Family Preserve, an example of a park that directly boundaries. You can see how close the home is there. So we take the annual grasses that can grow to 1 foot to 2 feet in that park some years. Depends from year to year. We weed whip those to the ground. The trees on the left are oak trees primarily. They're raised to be off the ground so that we raise the fuel ladder and they can't rapidly spread into the trees. We take out some of the non-native vegetation that may be coming over from homes and grows along that property to reduce the fire risk and give us a platform that we can allow fire department, if there's a need, to defend the homes and the properties that are adjacent to there. So this is one of the areas of the 4 areas in 2014 in Schofield Park off the Vance Meadows side that we specifically targeted some of the $50,000 funding that we received. And on that hillside, there were still trees that were dying or standing dead from the last major fire that came through there. So you can see what we've done is gone through this hillside, and it's a prime example of how we've gone through and raised the trees so they're up off the ground. We've reduced the amount of vegetation that was in there, which was quite dense. We've taken all the dead material that was easily accessible and chipped it up on site, onto the hillside, so the biomass is still there. And the large grassy area in front of it is annually mowed by the Parks Division, excuse me. This is one of our areas in Lower Franceschi Park where we have eucalyptus grove. What we do there is to remove sucker growth and low vegetation and as much of the ground litter as we're able to reduce the amount of burnable and fuel and fire fuels that are in there, because it's on a fairly steep slope, and it can slow down any fire that could potentially get there and reduce the fire risk. It's primarily done with the contractors in that park. This is another area on the opposite side of Lower Franceschi Park. There's a draw that goes up towards some homes. It's primarily oak woodland in there. And over the years, there were a number of trees that had been fallen and cut up and either laid down or that had recently come down. Well, we went through there with a contractor and cut those into pieces. We physically had to take them down off the site. It's a fairly difficult site to get to, so it took a lot of man hours to remove that material and get it off site. But it's in an area you can see that's a very steep slope, and given a fire that could start below, it would rapidly spread up the hill. And we also brought the skirts of the trees up, and you can see how much easier it would be to contain or limit a fire or prevent it with the scenario on the right after the work was completed. So this is a picture of what's kind of unique in a couple of our parks, Stevens Park and Parma Park, where we have hiking trails. Parma, we're blessed to have a really large property and a number of hiking trails that go through it. Part of what we do in the vegetative fuels work is trail clearing. So you can easily see which one's before and which one's after there. It grows really, really dense in some of the areas in there. So that helps us maintain this. We have to do it once a year, and it allows the trails to stay open as well as provide some small fire breaks. The other thing that we do in Parma Park is in Upper Parma Park, there's a large grass area, a couple of them, that are mowed by the contractor. There's a couple of purposes that it ends up in. It's an emergency landing field for some of the hang gliders that go up there. But in our most recent wildfires, it is a large fire break. And a number of the residents up there frequently contact me and talk to us about how much they appreciate the fire reduction that was in that park. And the last major fire that went through there, we lost 80% of that park, the vegetation in there. And that was one of the areas at the top because of the work that the fire was able to be managed. It didn't stop it completely, but in that area we were able to work with the fire department. So that's my portion of this. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Fry, our open space planner, and she has a few more things to add.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening. The program that Steve just described does protect park property and adjacent properties, but it also has the potential to impact natural resources in our open space parks. And those resources include native habitats, wetlands, special status plants, and special status wildlife. Some examples of those resources on the left, up in the top here, is a special status plant. That's Santa Barbara honeysuckle. Over in the top right is an example of a wetland, a creek within our open spaces, and also riparian corridor, another habitat or creekside habitat. And then the bottom picture is a picture of another one of our park habitats, which is oak woodland. Other natural resources within our city parks, we have monarch butterfly roosts, which are found in the eucalyptus trees of the Douglas Family Preserve. In the bottom is an example of a nesting bird, which is also protected when we do our work. And nesting birds are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And then in the upper right is an example of a special status wildlife. In this case, it's dusky-footed wood rat, And what you see there is a midden or a nest that's left by the wood rat in scrub habitat. The Parks Division complies with city, state, and federal agency regulations, and also in doing this, they reduced impacts to the resources within the park while the work that Steve described was being done. Some of the ways that we accomplish that is by the avoidance of resources, and that may include timing the work that was discussed outside of the time when there's a sensitive resource available in the park. That may include a nesting bird, or it may include those areas where you find the monarch butterfly roost when the butterflies are there, which is from November to March. And the nesting bird season is from February through early February through mid-August. Other things that our staff and contractors do is to protect oak saplings while they're out mowing the fields that you saw. And then also wood rat nests are flagged and they're avoided when work is being done, such as raising the fuel ladder. We also minimize impacts to species by performing biological surveys. And when those surveys come back, and if there is a species that could be impacted, such as, I'll use the example again of nesting birds, we comply with setbacks that are prescribed by the biologist. And the setback would be performing work outside of that area in a buffer zone away from where a nesting bird would be within a tree. And also there may be a prescription to limit work, possibly because of noise. Hand tools may be prescribed instead of chainsaws in an area where a bird would be nesting in order to prevent that bird from flushing off of the nest or abandoning the nest. We also have other measures that help not only to protect the natural resources, but in some ways actually enhance our natural resources from the fire work that we do. Non-native species are regularly eradicated in the work that we do, and when that happens, it leaves open spaces on the ground for our native species and native habitats to move into those areas. Staff and contractors also use chippers and chip branches, which then leaves wood chips, and those are spread on the ground, and they retain the soil moisture and also help to suppress weeds. And then by us implementing the integrated pest management plan, no herbicides are used to remove these weeds or to remove the vegetation during the firework that we do. And that helps to protect our open space habitats through not having herbicides within the parks. And then lastly, our best management practices that our contractors and staff use in their work also helps protect natural resources. And in closing, the park's defensible space and vegetative fuels work protects park and private property, and the city parks division also is a very good land steward that implements measures that helps to reduce impacts to natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Biddle and Ms. Fry. Appreciate it. Does anyone have questions or comments? Ms. Longstreet?
I would just like to say, after the T-Fire, Santos Escobar took me up to Parma Park, and we looked at those houses that were saved basically by the fuels management work. And it was pretty astounding to see how much devastation was around and how the work that you all do had prevented the loss of those homes. So I really appreciate it, and it was good to see it firsthand.
Anyone else?
Just a quick comment. So, in terms of reading the report and looking at your presentations, we don't use goats or anything like that because of trying to protect samplings and whatnot.
Chair Wiscombe, Commissioner Rincon, we do use goats in some instances. I know we use them at Schofield. We've used them at Schofield in the past, and they are regularly used at Parma Park. And the contractor that comes in with the goats uses exclusion fencing if there's a resource that we're concerned about. I know we have fenced out Santa Barbara honeysuckle, and then also areas where oaks are. And it can also be beneficial, if timed correctly, to encourage other natives, which is actually happening at Parma.
Anyone else? I had a quick question. So, we're in a long-term drought, and are we getting sufficient funding to manage these programs? Obviously, I would think our costs are accelerating because of our dry conditions, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But is there adequate funding? Well, never.
Chair Wiscombe and members of the commission. When we did have budget reductions, the budget for our vegetative fuels program was reduced, but we have tried to maintain it and enhance it wherever possible. So we are fortunate, for example, in Parma Park, that the Parma Park Trust supports certainly the contracted work that we do that meets our vegetative management and defensible fuels goals. Staff does it as well. And then also in the last fiscal year, so fiscal year 14, we requested and received funds that were transferred from another portion of our budget, and we did additional work, in part because the funds were available, and that was unusual, but also because we saw the need, particularly during the drought, to further address fuels reduction, and worked with the fire department specifically around dead trees and downed wood that could become more of a concern given how dry the area is. I think over the years, the Parks Division has become increasingly efficient and effective in its approach to this program, and we map all the locations every year, and we know really where to go and what to do. We've learned a lot, and we work very closely with the fire department, and they ultimately review and approve all of the work that we do in our parks. And there's a balance, obviously. There's maintaining habitat and vegetation, but also protecting adjacent homes and not contributing to the potential of fire threat if something were to occur. So we always have it first and foremost in our minds. And then I would just like to add one more thing. When our urban forest program, part of what we do through trimming trees and maintaining trees in our parks and open space parks that falls under other parts of our department budget, get at those objectives as well.
Thank you for the comprehensive answer to that. Obviously these programs protect private property, public property, and make our city a lot safer, and with sensitivity to some of the wonderful species that we have here that are special to Santa Barbara. I commend you it's a big effort for you all to work together and work with the fire department, and you have you all have special niches in getting the work done effectively and efficiently and protecting species, and it's great to see, and thank you very much for all you do for that. It was a great report. Appreciate it. I hope City Council gets the report sometime. I think it's important for them to see the work that's being done to protect property and lives and species also. So, thank you. Okay, we are moving on to agenda item number 6, which is the junior golf programs at the Santa Barbara Golf Club.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, a few years ago, boy, I just really can't talk. A few years ago, we talked to the Commission about a priority for the golf course was to really focus on our junior programs. And the junior programs, the operation of those is through the Pro Shop and under the direction of Chris Tallarico. And so we, a couple of years ago, we came and asked the people who operate the junior golf programs to come and share with you some of the new programs that they were offering and the growth in those programs. And tonight we would like to do the same thing and just kind of update you with those programs. I will say that Pete LaMantia, who is the lead person organizing the junior golf programs, working with Mr. Tallarico, has done an outstanding job. This is a man who has a passion for youth golf, and it is because of him that we have the variety of programs and the quality of programs that we have. And I really want to acknowledge both Mr. Tallarico and especially Pete for the work that he has done to grow these programs. So we passed out information to you on the programs, and unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm just seeing the one page. Is that all they got? No, there were several pages. So I'm going to apologize, Pete. They don't have your different pages. They just have the, I'm sorry, I should have looked at it and I didn't. We will make sure that we send you a PDF of an overview of all of those programs. My error, I apologize. So with that, though, if we could have Mr. LaMantia come up and talk briefly about the junior golf programs, and then also we would like to recognize his efforts. Pete?
Well, he's coming up. I have seen the full report because Mr. Tallarico presented it to Golf Advisory Committee, and it's quite impressive.
You're not using the laptop, right?
Well, we can. I mean, we're going to show the link, and we
It's
can
too
just.
late because we're not hooked up to the.
We're working. We're hooked up.
Oh, you are?
I just need someone to switch it over from that one to this one.
Oh, we'll do it. Okay, perfect. All right.
Good evening, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. My name is Chris Tallarico. I'm the director of golf at Santa Barbara Golf Club. I've been the director of golf there since late 2008. And one of our main goals when we came in to take over as the programs there at Santa Barbara Golf Club was to enhance our youth golf programs. One of the things that stood out to me, being an assistant there for 17 years prior to that, is we had one individual program through the Parks and Rec, which was a really good program. It was outstanding, the Russ Morrison Junior Golf Program. But it was starting to need a little attention, and it didn't touch all the services and all the youth golf activities and programs that we really had wanted to get to. And being a PGA member since 2007 now, that one of our goals is really to grow the game of golf, and what better way to start is through the youth. And so it got my attention really as a passion of mine to really try to take the program that we had existing, to grow that, buff it up a little bit, but also to add some other programs, some other options, and give all the youth in our community and their parents as well a great platform and different options to play, whether it's introduction level to competing at the highest level. So it really started there, and that was really one of our goals. And knowing that a lot of it isn't always a financial benefit. A lot of it is really giving back to the community, developing these kids and giving them values and resources that they can use going forward in life that may not even have anything to do with golf, but building character and some really good things. So one of the things about that was we really put an effort in, Pete and I, into growing the Russ Morrison program, which we've done. It was waffling around 50 participants a year, and now it's 90 plus. So we've really done a great job with that. And it goes to not just speaking to myself and to Pete, but we have a very great staff out there of fellow PGA members and LPGA member that put their time, and this is their passion. This is what they're into and what they do the best at. And so, unfortunately, they can't be here. We'd like to have been here to be recognized as well today, but they are actually running youth programs as we speak. So be Doug Crane, who heads our First Tee program, which is a national program through the PGA of America. Larry Bucher, who works directly with Pete here doing our Russ Morrison Junior Golf program. Brent Cole and Dave Thornton, who had our camps for our summer camps. And Sally Quinlan, who does our really young, we call it Guppy Golf, which is our really little kids So when we first came in, we had one program that really tackled 7 to 17-year-old kids, and it was really an introduction to golf. It was really a bare bones through the parks and recs, real low cost, and really just non-committal, but to get people introduced to the game. And we still have that program, which is great. But we did lack some programs that have a little bit more emphasis on playing and on life skills and the leagues that we've been addressing as well. So with that, we've brought in the First Tee program back in 2010, and it has grown exponentially as well. We'll get to those numbers when you guys can all see them. In the saving time, we won't go through every slide and bore you with all the details with it. But I wanted to just really give you guys an idea about what we do out there and why we do it. And I'll let Pete talk about his passion for it and why the programs have been mainly successful as his efforts, and along with the rest of my staff. But again, we've talked about the one thing that was really key when Pete came on is when we brought all these different programs in, we didn't have a way to get them all on the same page. We developed a web page and a youth golf, so it's SantaBarbaraYouthGolf.com. That's really give the parents and the kids and our staff one area to go to be able to get all their information, whether they're looking to just get introduced to golf or whether they want to play and earn scholarships in college to going on to having a career in golf. So kind of with that said, we've addressed our programs with that in mind, kind of our bare bones program, which is the Russ Morrison, our First Tee program, which addresses building on that program. Maybe the kids that are a little bit more interested now, the Russ Morrison program sparked them into something else. Now they've gone to the First Tee, and now the First Tee really teaches a lot of more than just golf. They're real based on core values, and they have 9 core values that they teach and base on. And one of their big slogans, as they like to say, is that kids may even learn golf along the way. So it's one of the programs that we're most proud of there, and along with all of them. But one of the ones that we brought in has really taken off, and the comments and feedback that we get from parents and kids is really what gets our reward to us from that. So without having to go through all the numbers and bore you with all the details, which you guys will have in your packet, we'll make sure that you get all that. And you can also go to our website and look it up as well. But again, the one things we were looking at is growing these programs, which we have. We've grown them exponentially over the years, and it's been great for the community. It's been great for our golf course, getting recognition in that aspect. And what we've found out going through this process, we've developed these great programs, and we have all these kids out there participating in them, but we've started to really see a little bit of a decline in the kids actually going and playing. And we had a few reasons why. We've done some research on that and understood why that was happening. A lot of them, we've had some demographic shifts that have caused those problems. Some of the issues were that we built these programs to introduce people to golf, but we never really followed through with other programs getting them out there to play. Some of them are the skill sets of some of the kids were not the programs we were running were not getting to that stage. So we've addressed that this year. We've really attacked some issues with that last year and this year. We've started a junior golf league, which Peach has run during the summer, which is great for getting the kids actually on the golf course now. This year we've started a program that the PGA of America has really pushed forward. It's called PGA League Golf, and it's a kind of a model off your Little League or AYSO soccer, and getting these kids to participate in a team format with a group, and they compete against each other, and it gives them a chance to participate and play golf without having the pressures of their own golf ball, playing their own shot all the time, and it really gives them an opportunity to grow in a team atmosphere and not feel the pressures of being in an individual sport as golf is. So it's been taking off. The PGA started this program a number of years ago. I think it was 2009, and they had about 2,000 participants. It's grown to about 9,000 participants now, and we've just started one this year, and we've gotten about 36 participants, and we have 6 teams that will be competing against each other, and we just started the instruction that goes into it, the training, and now we'll be starting the competitions this summer. So we're really looking forward to that and seeing how that gets, bridging that gap that we still struggle with even with adult golf, getting the people from the first tee and the instruction and the clinics to getting out there and taking that step and plunging out on the golf course. As you know, it can be a little bit intimidating to be out there on the golf course and playing if you're not confident in your skill set. So we feel like we're giving them the tools to be good people as they go forward, and to also get comfortable with their skill set on the golf course. Another thing we introduced this year, which we were very excited about the turnout, was we worked with the Police Activities League with PAL this year, and we've gotten a great response from that. We just finished up our spring session, which was very, very well received. We have some numbers in there as well that you can look at, but it was we had a play day at the end of the sessions, which were instructional sessions run by one of our apprentices at the golf course, and it's gone to I think we ended up with about 23 participants in the play day, which is great, getting these underserved kids out onto the golf course and getting them to at least experience golf and not just the nuts and bolts that go into it. And it was very exciting to see the feedback from that, and we'll continue to run that program as well to address those issues. So I think kind of in my overview with this is, we've talked about the demographic change. Pete can speak to a little bit of that. He works a lot more with a lot of the kids and those, the high school kids and the what demographics were represented within our different programs. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pete, and thank you for your time.
Did you leave me anything to say, Chris?
No, that's fine. Thanks.
Pete, can we make sure you've got your green button pushed so that we can have you mic'd?
Very good. So we're going to?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. So again, thank you, Nancy, for that recognition. Very much appreciated. And I suppose I go by two simple rules. Rule number 1 would be to have an idea, and rule number 2 is to make sure it's a good one. And that's where Chris Tellerico has been such an inspiration. He's really good at going in the sounding board. We'll talk things over. And I really appreciate his insight into things. He makes good decisions. So we'll come to into the office. We'll talk about some things for the youth programs. And he's very good at putting me on course with what will work and what probably is not such a perfect idea to go forward on. So using that, we try to formulate programs for the kids that are fun. I'm a big believer in that kids really, they need a childhood. They need something fun and interesting. I mean, my uncle tried to teach me golf when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I spent about a half an hour with him trying to learn how to put my hands on the golf club. I swore I would never touch a golf club as long as I lived, okay? It takes something different than that. I mean, instruction is important, but it takes something to inspire kids, to get them interesting. I mean, when someone is motivated and they feel like it's their idea, they're going to learn so quickly, and it's going to be so much fun. And all the programs that we have at Santa Barbara Golf Club for the juniors seem to reflect that. I mean, I got started with this when my son was 8 years old. So I guess I've been doing this for about 8 years now, mostly as a volunteer to begin with, and got more interested in the programs. But just to see these kids get into something where the instructors are so good with them and they give them fun and interesting things to do, and the kids want to pick it up right away. And we don't worry if they have perfect swings to begin with, if they're going to hit a putt straight into the hole. We get them used to what's fun to do with golf, to be able to say, okay, start taking some swings. See if you can hit a ball. Hey, let's try this. Let's change this just a little bit. Let's put your hands on the club maybe a little bit firmer. And as it goes and progresses, it seems like the kids haven't been told anything whatsoever at all. They just start to get the hang of it. They get into it, and they're happy. And from that, there's just a natural progression that they move through. So the slide that we have up starts with, I think, one of our first ones I'd like to address, which is our Guppy Golf program. And Sally Quinlan, let's see, what can I say about Sally? Well, she's not here. I guess I can say anything I want to. But no, she's really a terrific individual. She has an ability to work with kids at such a young age. Now, I thought I had a brilliant idea, and you see, you weren't around to help me back then when my son was 3 years old. Took him out to a miniature golf course, put a putter in his hand. I got my putter. I said, Peter, watch me. Putt the ball. Here we go. Putt the ball. Okay, now watch. I'm really close to the hole. Putt the ball into the hole. Now I want you to try. He goes back to the little tee box that they have on the miniature golf course. He puts his ball down. He looks at me. He drops his putter. He picks up the ball. He walks over to the hole. He puts it in the hole, says, all done. I thought to myself, I don't know. 3 years old, I'm going to wait. I waited till he was 8 years old. I wish I would have had someone like Sally Quinlan back then with a program like this to start my son in. Because who knows? I mean, we have one girl now. She started when she was 5. She's 8 years old now. And at this age, they play 9 holes of golf. I started her in my league a little bit early because I could really see she just loved the game of golf. She broke 50 just a few weeks ago. She's only 8 years old. I mean, you're talking about a par of 36. So she's pretty much playing very close to bogey golf. And that's for the full length of the course. We're not shortening the course for her. So from the red tees, she's able to shoot under 50, and she's only 8 years old now. So it's very inspiring to see kids develop all the way up even to that particular level, whether they're just having fun with the game or they're developing all the way up into, her mother would like her to even get into LPGA, and I don't see anything stopping her at this point. So thanks to people like Sally Quinlan, kids even at age 3 to 6 years old have that opportunity. And from that, we'll go to the next one, the Russ Morrison program, which has been a long-time junior golf program at Santa Barbara Golf Club. This is probably the first one that I got my son Peter interested in. And Larry Bucher was one of the coaches out there at that time, took a special interest in Peter. And he told me, he says, it's amazing with him. He says, he doesn't quite get the instruction part 100%, but he has a way of finding the hole. I said, yeah, he started that when he was 3 years old. I know what you're talking about. But he was terrific with the kids. He takes special interest in all the kids. And the Russ Morrison Junior program has some amazing things that it offers. We put on a tournament for the kids once a year in September, which is fun. They'll all go out. The older ones will play their individual scores. The younger ones get to play in a scramble. So they get a sense of, if they haven't even played golf before at a very early age, what it's like to get out on the golf course with a lot of support. Their parents are out there. Everybody's helping. And they get a chance to experience golf. We have a Wednesday Blue group for our Russ Morrison kids, where if they reach a particular level where it can see, yep, they're serious about it. They want to be out on the golf course. They want to be able to play. We get them out there. Coach Larry and I will both go out. We'll take carts. We'll keep a good eye on them, and we'll get them out on the course. And one of the things I really love about this, generally you'd think, oh, no, I'm behind kids. They're going to be so slow. They're not. They've got the etiquette down. They keep up the pace of play. We'll have kids out on a Wednesday when we've got a league on our tail following us. And we will get those kids around the course. The league does not catch up with the kids. They're having fun, and they're hitting all their shots. They're able to play. And I am so impressed with that at such an early age that you can have a kids program, and you can integrate it in with adults and have that happening. So it's just a terrific program, the Russ Morrison Junior program. It offers a scholarship, $2,000 scholarship. Now we upped it from last year from $1,000 scholarship for kids that are graduating high school. And we generally hold a tournament once a year to raise money, although I'll tell you this time, as far as funds go, I mean, we're in great shape. We're over 90. I think we have 93 because there's a couple we won't turn in until July when we get off break. But I believe we have 93 participants right now. We have a limit of 100. I don't know if we can up that at all. But we've never had this many at the intern point. I mean, by July, we'll have more people adding on. So either there's going to be room for about 7 more, or possibly if Parks and Rec would consider raising that. We definitely have the coaching staff for it. I have one more coach that I need to add right now who worked out great, Alex Milovich, who, and this is also kind of interesting. I think kids' programs are infectious. He first kind of looks at us like, I don't know, it's scary. They're kids. I said, well, give it a try. Come on out and try it. And he was a little uptight to begin with for the first couple of times, and then he started to get a little bit more relationships going on with the kids and their game and their swing. He said, you know, I like this. This is good. And he loosened up a little bit. The kids love him, and it works out. In fact, one of the guys right now is going to be helping Sally Quinlan with her Guppy Golf program, one of our youngest PGA arrivals now. Sid Story. Do I have his last name right?
Wasson.
Pardon me?
Wasson. Sid Wasson.
Wasson. Okay, Sid Wasson. I know his mother quite well, but different name now. So anyways, Sid Wasson. He started out helping us with one of our first tee. We needed another coach for the day. He says, okay, I'll help you guys out. He went back to his mom. He says, you know, I think I'm never having kids. It was a little intimidating to start with. We kept him in it a little bit. Now, I think he's totally changed his mind on that. He's great with the kids. He came to me when he was doing the PALS program. He says, this is amazing. I mean, they're really learning it. They're liking it. They're catching on. This is great. So there is really something infectious about it when you have a good a format to work with, like we have the Santa Barbara Junior Golf Club. And it's incredible. I think it's just going to grow and grow with more people participating and being interested in the junior programs. So for the Russ Morrison program, I'd like to move on to our junior golf camps. Wonderful person, Dave Thornton, who comes up from Ventura. We'll drive all the way up from Ventura to host 3 junior golf camps over the summertime with Brent Cole, one of our other local PGA professionals. And Dave is his insight. He was one of our teachers of the year. He does terrific work with the golf swing. Introduces the kids to a lot of the golf etiquette that's very important. He's got them out, for a very long period of time. And he used to run some of the spring camps as well, but had some time constraints. I had talked with Chris about, there's really terrific where the golf camps offer something that our other programs don't, which is a long concentrated time, 3 hours instead of an hour and a half, and 4 days in a row. So you can put a lot of different aspects of the game all into 1 week's time period, but with enough time to spend that you can really concentrate on skill levels. Consequently, we went from the summer program from the 2014 season to developing also a winter, a spring, and a fall golf camp for our kids, which is now growing. So, I mean, thanks to Dave for the great idea with the holding the golf camps. Again, I think that's just another wonderful, diverse section of the junior programs. Then we have the first tee. This is probably the second program that I started my son in when I met Coach Doug Crane. Volunteered in it for quite some time, and I was approached by Butch Breeden, who's our Central Coast Regional Director. And Butch had asked me, he says, Peter, if you're going to stay involved in this, would you like to go through the First Tee coaching program? And I took a look at it and thought, this is a pretty amazing thing. They have their 9 core values that they teach. They have this wonderful way of putting forth, getting the kids to learn through creativity. I'm talking all the time right now, but it would be just the opposite. If I was teaching juniors right now today, it would be 10 seconds of talk and 5 minutes of doing. So that was one wonderful thing that we had from our experience with the First Tee organization. So I decided, I'm going to go ahead and do that, became a First Tee coach, and I've worked with Doug Crane now for well over 4 years with the First Tee program. He's excellent with kids. The program continues to grow, and that gives us our aspect that we do not use in the other golf programs, which is also our life skills. And many of the parents love to sign up for that because they get their kids to learn 9 core values that we can all use in life, and they really take. In fact, one, with my own son, Peter, schools these days, I'm not crazy about the school system, all right? They have a lot of homework. They don't let kids use their imagination much. And because they give them so much homework, I think the teachers feel a little bad, so they'll put the things online, so it's like, well, start your homework, but a little later in the evening, if you go online, you can pretty much write down all the answers, turn it in. My son won't do that. Sometimes his grades go from A's to B's because he doesn't quite get the 100% on a homework where he'll ace a test. But he has this idea in his head from the First Tee. It's like, Dad, it's integrity. I'm here to learn. I could write it all down and copy it, not learn a thing. Or I could try and learn the best I can. If I don't get it quite right, so what? I get a B. But at least I learned something. I love that, And First Tee was one of the things from way back when he was 8 years old, instilled that core value. So I'm very appreciative to have the First Tee at Santa Barbara Golf Club. Next one Santa Barbara Youth Golf League. I started my son Peter in the next one that will go over past this, which is the Santa Barbara Junior Golf Tour. I loved it. It was like terrific. The kids play a bunch of different courses. They get to play competitive golf. So if they brought their skill level up, they said, now they can go out and they can compete against one another and see how well they can do. There's only one problem with it. It only went during the summer months. 9 months then out of the year, kids put the golf clubs away. They do something else. Their skill set doesn't do quite as well with that amount of time off. And I thought to myself, well, there's lots of other sports that they compete with junior golf. You get your soccer, your baseball, all wonderful sports. And the cool thing about it is for kids, as many sports as they can be in, studies have shown that one sport reinforces another sport. All right? So the athletics is something that we look at. It's like if they play baseball, great. We can incorporate that into golf. We can incorporate basketball skills into golf. It's great to have them out there. Problem is, what if you have a golf league and it competes with baseball and they go, I'd love to play, but I'm playing baseball. So we came up with the idea to do it on a once-a-month basis. We run 9-hole tournaments for the kids. They can play once a month. It doesn't interfere with baseball, basketball, or any other football, etc. practice and games. It allows the kids to go ahead and pretty much take what they had during the summer tour and keep up with their golf skills all year long. And that has been a really just a huge pleasure to be able to have that put together by Mr. Tellerico, simply because you're looking at a time span to do this where it's just enough time to get 9 holes of golf in with we usually run around maybe 24. I think about 24, about 6 groups on the golf course. So it's a very narrow window to be able to put it all together. And it just works, which is really fantastic to be able to have that at the facility. Summer programs, much more daylight, much easier to run. But to have this thing all year, it's on a shoestring, but yet it still goes forward and works very, very well. Which goes to our last program, Santa Barbara Junior Golf Program, which has been a long-standing program, goes way back to the 1970s, and allows juniors, when they reach a level of play, to be able to compete on several courses in the Santa Barbara area. Courses will comp the kids. They'll be able to go ahead and play 18 holes for the older kids, 9 holes for the younger kids, and they compete for trophies and various awards. My son right now, as a matter of fact, is attending one up at the La Purísima course, which is a scramble tournament, and I'll pick him up a little bit later on this evening when they get back. So as much as when the kids get to be 17, 18 years old, they still have these programs that they're interested in through things like the golf tour or the youth golf leagues. The younger ones, more or less, Russ Morrison and First Tee, so we're really covering all the ages, and of course at the very youngest, the Guppy Golf Program. So the very last page, which I'm not sure which page do you have? Do you have this last one? You have the Guppy. You have the first one. Okay. So the page 7. Well, I don't really want to go over all the facts and figures that you can see up there, but just to quickly summarize, because I'm really not that much of a stats person, you can see with Guppy we've had a 45% increase from start to 2014. The golf camps have been up about 66%. The First Tee has grown 93%, almost doubled. The Youth Golf League, 117% since its inception. And Santa Barbara Junior Golf, the last 4 years that I've run it, the last 2 have been up to full capacity. So as far as growth goes, I suppose support from parks, what we're looking at is if we could have some expansion in, for instance, like the Russ Morrison program, that would be appreciated. First Tee program, we're taking on additional coaches. Russ Morrison program, we just took on an additional coach. The Santa Barbara Youth Golf League, it's just limited by the time of day. Like I say, when we start in the winter months, especially at 3:30 after school's out, we're very fortunate to be able to get done just before dark. So I do have to limit the number of players on that. So I consider that right now with about 50 players, about full capacity. With that, I'd just like to open it up for any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
And while Chair Wiscombe is making her way down, I do want to especially thank again Mr. Tallarico for his leadership for growing the youth golf programs. And it has been wonderful to see the new programs grow, and the growth of programs that have been in place for a long time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
The numbers speak for themselves, and I add certainly my gratitude and congratulations for the youth program at Muni. I think it's wonderful. You've got some really great things going on there, and I actually have friends that have kids that play there and love it. So it's great, and they go year after year. So you're doing a lot of things right. So Pete, if you'd come up here, please. We would like to give you a certificate in appreciation on behalf of the City of Santa Barbara Parks and Recreation Department and the Parks and Recreation Commission. We'd like to present you with this community service recognition certificate for the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you so much. And we also have them for Dave Thornton and Sally Quinlan, Larry Bucher, and Doug Crane. So great. And Chris, thank you for everything that you do at the golf club for the junior programs too. I think you're a wonderful team. So thank you so much. Okay, we are on agenda item number 7. Ms. Zachary, Cabrillo Pavilion and Bathhouse renovation status report.
Chair Wiscombe and members of the Commission, really want with this presentation to give you a status report on the Cabrillo Bathhouse and Pavilion renovation project. The last time the Commission received a status report was November of last year. It's now June, so 8 months or so have passed. And also just as a quick reminder, in case anyone happens to be scrolling through Channel 18 and they don't know about this project, the building is located on East Beach. It was constructed in 1926 and gifted to the city in 1927. It has served as a prime important recreational facility since it was constructed. In fact, when it was gifted to the city, it was done so with the stipulation that it was for park and recreation purposes. Over the years, it's had different activities in it. It's gone through various renovations. It's now at the point at which, in order to better serve the community for the next 50-plus years, it needs full-scale renovation. But through that renovation, as you know, our goals are to maintain the historic integrity of the building. It is a structure of merit that was designated by the city. However, all of its building systems need to be replaced. We need to look at it structurally and seismically for today, and then also accessibility. Our plan includes interior renovations, includes improvements to increase site safety. Our ultimate goals are to enhance community use and programming. And then part of where we are at the moment in this project is to move forward with the LEED commissioning process. And our goal is to achieve LEED Silver. Once the analysis starts, we'll find out whether we can actually achieve that. So since you got your last status report, we've achieved a few milestones. We've completed all of the technical studies for the project. Back in November, December, we were working on biology, geology, archaeology, also our coastal hazards, sea level rise analysis. We submitted our coastal development permit application in March and got our completeness letter June 2nd. So we went through the first round and came out pretty unscathed. So when we resubmitted, meeting the whole 30-day review requirements, we got our acceptance letter fairly quickly. So a lot of the front-end work that we've been doing for the last year and a half has really paid off, really trying to answer all of the questions that we expected would come up through the coastal development application process. We're here today to provide you with a quick update. We will be at City Council on June 30th, next Tuesday, providing them with an update as well as recommending that they approve the contract for the lead commissioning agent. Lead commissioning agent comes in at this point in the project. They evaluate our designs where they are today and influence final design, and then also our on-site during construction, and then also test all the systems to make sure that we meet all the standards that our equipment set out to meet and our design set out to meet. So the contract that we're recommending approval next week will cover that entire period. So that's the last sort of big effort for that. We're also planning a community open house. We had one last September to sort of introduce members of the public to the project, unveil our design approach. Your staff report says August 5th, but we've settled on August 4th, which is a Tuesday. Yes, it's a Tuesday. It's a challenging time because it is right before Fiesta begins, but at the same time, we did want to have an open house before we go to Planning Commission, and our hearing at Planning Commission is tentatively scheduled for August 20th. That's a Thursday. But at this community open house, which we intend to have in the bathhouse level of the facility, we want to begin to sort of look at the floor plans and talk about programming and future recreation. We did some of that through our business plan process with certain stakeholders. We now want to reinitiate that discussion and continue that discussion as we sort of go through the next phases of the project. And then also just want to add that we are taking the project to the Access Advisory Committee. They are an advisory committee, but it's a good opportunity for us to illustrate how the city is approaching bringing this facility up to today's accessibility ADA standards, and it's actually 100%. We're meeting every standard. So it's a good opportunity to illustrate what's going on with the project. So very briefly, our coastal hazard sea level rise analysis essentially is something we undertook to be compatible with the city's local coastal plan and also recent guidelines from the State Coastal Commission. The purpose of it is to evaluate the vulnerability of the facility, both today and in the future, looking at different scenarios, looking at high and low, low and high sea level rise scenarios. As a number of our commissioners know, it's all based on models. We don't really know what's going to happen, but we are required to look at what we think might happen and then also come up with methods to address and reduce the vulnerability of our facilities. One of the first things we will be doing with the pavilion is flood-proofing the entire facility. We have to do a lot of site excavation, so we'll be flood-proofing. That's our first step. The analysis indicates that by 2065, we could be looking at periodic coastal storm events, increasing flooding. That sea level rise may begin to be a factor, so we have identified in our application the importance of the city's current beach nourishment program towards ensuring we can adapt to those changes, enhancing sediment management to respond to that. And then also look at other soft solutions that we might implement. For example, putting up a temporary winter berm, which we already do in other parts of the city to protect the building under storm events. That type of activity would be permitted separately under a separate coastal development permit. It's projected out in the future. We also, as some commissioners are aware, determined through all of our research about the building's history, and this is a very small photograph, but if you can see, here is the pavilion, and this is what it looked like a long, long time ago before the rest of the area was developed. Here is the former East Beach Boulevard before Cabrillo Boulevard was constructed. The road actually passed in front of the building. Here's the parking lot that you can see here on the west side. At this time, there wasn't an east side parking lot. But if you can sort of make out in this tiny photograph a rough edge along here, this is actually some shoreline protection rock that was installed 1929, 1930, 1931. We've done a little bit of reconnaissance and determined that it's all still there. It's just the beach sand has risen so much. It used to be 4 or 5 feet lower than it is today. Part of our modeling takes that into account, that it will continue to provide a protective role for the area. So next steps, assuming we get our coastal development approvals by the Planning Commission in August, we will go into phase 2, and that's final design and construction documents, continuing our community outreach efforts, initiating our project fundraising initiative. We've been really waiting to get to this point in the project where we have a project that is approved, and then also rekindling our efforts at our business planning for the facility once the facility is reopened. So from a scheduling standpoint, as I mentioned, we hope phase 1 will be complete August. Maybe it'll take till September. Phase 2 would begin in October, and we'd actually be returning to the City Council with recommendations for final design, construction contracts, our proposed approach to marketing and fundraising, and then also our plans to initiate the business planning, and then also begin the discussion about the approach to the restaurant concession, because that's something that we need to begin having that conversation about and make a recommendation to council at that point. The completion of phase 2 is really depending on having all of the funds in place to build the project. The design work, the construction documents work may not take more than 6 months. As you know, we have a project estimate of about $12 million. That we have 9.1, and that's total project cost. So we're spending some of that $12 million already. We have 9.1 in former RDA bond proceeds. As part of our 2-year budget plan, we requested 1.5 in capital, general fund capital. Council approved the budget on Tuesday, and that included $500,000 for this project. So we're at 9.6, you could say. So assuming the additional $1 million comes in fiscal year 17 from the general fund, we're looking at about 1.5 in fundraising needs. So some of the things we've started to do right now is look at what sort of state and foundation level larger construction type grant opportunities there might be out there, because that may be the most feasible way to bring in additional funds for the project, rather than undertaking a major capital campaign and trying to. There are lots of opportunities. Clearly, we'll look for anyone in the community that wants to support this project, and we know there's a lot of people out there that are very much looking forward to its renovation. So that concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions and go from there.
Thank you, Ms. Zachary. Appreciate the update on the project. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No? I just have one quick question. So the money, the RDA bond money that we successfully secured for this project, is that a whole separate process to actually, I know some of it's been expended and you have use of some of it, but does that take time for them to chunk out that money to give to you when you need it?
Chair Wiscombe and members of the commission, we report every 6 months on funds expended in the prior 6 months and then funds needed in the subsequent 6 months, and that goes to the Oversight Board and then ultimately goes to the State Department of Finance. So funds have already been approved through that process for all of the work we've done to date. As we look towards coming up with our actual construction dates, we would need to program a request for those funds. And one of the things that we are balancing with all of this is the concern that we do need to expend these funds quickly. They're not something that we would wait multiple years to move forward with. in some ways that's a challenge. In other ways, it's an opportunity in that we have those funds available, believe that it has the potential to have great leveraging effect on bringing in other funds for the project. The fact that we have so much already and that we would like to move forward in an expeditious manner, that we would be able to secure additional funding based on that.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you get further in the process and people start to have that vision, then that's, of what can be or what will be, then it's easier to get funding. It's getting through these next steps. But congratulations for how far you've gotten. I think you've really done a marvelous job, and I'm looking forward to the community open house. I think that will be really interesting. So thank you, Ms. Zachary, for that. Okay, our next item is agenda item number 8, Parks and Recreation recommended fiscal year 2016-17 budget update. Ms. Rapp.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, since we have discussed the proposed budget several times with you, I wanted to just recap. Council did adopt the budget for 2016 and 2017 on Tuesday, yesterday. And I wanted to highlight for you some of the changes since you last saw the budget that were in the adopted budget. So there was a request from the school district to increase funding for the junior high after-school sports program. As you'll remember, when the presentation was made to you, the school district has done a very good job in growing that program, and they asked in the joint meeting of the school board and the city council, they said if the city could increase their funding, they could expand even further. So city council did agree to add to the Parks and Recreation budget just under $13,000. And so we are communicating that to the school district. This will apply for funds in the coming school year. And additionally, the City Council received a request from the Police Activities League to waive the annual rent that they pay to the city for the 1235 Teen Center, which was just under $10,000. The thinking behind that, and the department supported it if council wanted to look at that, was because the Police Activities League, when we were going through the difficult recession years, agreed to take on the operation and the programs of the Teen Center. It totaled over $150,000 commitment on an annual basis. And so in that way, what PAL does is different from many of the other nonprofits that lease space from the city. And so we did support that, and council did as well. And so that is now part of our budget. A comment that was made on the Creeks budget from the Creeks Advisory Committee, they expressed concern in the street sweeping program, which is partially funded with Measure B. They expressed concern that the NPDES permit, which is an annual permit that the city is required to have, was actually being built into the streets fund street sweeping budget, and they felt that that wasn't appropriate since Measure B funded part of that program, and the Public Works Department agreed, and they actually, as part of their budget, moved that expense out of the street sweeping program and into a different program budget within the Public Works Department. And then I'm sure that many of you are well aware, Council had several discussions about strategies and how quickly they wanted to take actions to get the city's policy reserves up to policy. and discussions of whether it should be 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And so ultimately, it was a decision to get there within 2 years. And part of getting there, council did fund all of the positions that we had requested, including the two that were the new funding, so the capital projects supervisor and the recreation specialist that will work with revenue generating programs out of the Carrillo Recreation Center. However, they did cut $500,000 of project funds that were included in the budget for Parks and Recreation. And very specifically, they were the project to move forward with looking and studies and planning for artificial turf in various park locations. Bonnet Park and Dwight Murphy were two that we've talked to the commission about. $100,000 that was budgeted to move the off-leash dog park forward. $100,000 that was proposed for 1,000 steps. This would be funds that would add to the $200,000 that we already have currently funded. And the intent of those funds was to do all of the studies that we could do to get to a place where we'd be in a strong position to go out and get grant funds for the full cost of the project. In staff's opinion, we can make pretty good progress with that in the next year with the $200,000 in funding, but we will need that money in the next year or so. And then lastly, $150,000 that was scheduled for moving the urban forest master plan forward. Very specifically, this was the street tree master plan. So those projects, and staff took this recommendation forward. We looked at all of we were very lucky to begin with. There were so many parks and recreation projects proposed for funding with the fiscal year 16 capital program. And we focused on funding for those projects that were already underway or a high priority in terms of playground replacement and things like that. So the other thing that affects Parks and Recreation capital going forward, and these projects are not removed from priority for the general fund capital, it's just that funding that was proposed for fiscal year 16 will not happen. So they'll be revisited again when we're talking about fiscal year 17 capital. However, one of the other changes that council made in trying to reach policy reserves is modifications to the current policy of what happens with the surplus at the year end. Currently, the policy is 50% goes to reserves and 50% goes to capital. So in order to get reserves built back more expeditiously, they are modifying that policy. So in any surplus from this current fiscal year 2015, 75% of that surplus will go to reserves and 25% to capital. Next year, 2016, 100% of the surplus will go to reserves and not to capital. And then in fiscal year 2017, 75% will go to reserves. And so that is the plan. What that means for us is we've been very fortunate in the last couple of years to see a real increase in Parks and Recreation capital funding. And I think we're going to be a bit more challenged in the next couple of years. We still have a lot of work on our plate, and we're going to move forward. But I think some of the priorities, particularly for the projects that were listed, it means that they probably won't go forward in the next couple of years without a lot of concern about relooking at priorities and limited funding available. So it's not good news, but it is a council priority to bring reserves up to policy level, and we're still very grateful for the capital funding that is still in the 2016 budget.
Thank
and
you,
I'd
Ms.
be happy to answer any questions
Thank
that you
you.
have.
Did you have a question, Ms.
I
Lindsay?
have a comment. I was fairly disappointed that we weren't able as a city to get to the point where we took the half-cent sales tax for capital to the voters. I think it's our right as a voter to get to weigh in on that. Whether it passed or not would be seen through that process. But our capital isn't going away. And I understand we need to rebuild our reserves. And I hope that they rebuild faster. I mean, that is the hope of everyone, is that they rebuild faster and we can refocus. But something like 1,000 Steps is truly a safety issue in so many ways, and it's a public access issue. Okay, I can see a dog off leash. We're just starting into some projects with that. But we have some things that are truly going to cost us a lot more money down the road, and I thought we were making headway that way. And it is disappointing to me that we're not moving forward with the things that are going to cost us more later and pose some safety hazards.
Anyone else have any comments? My comment, I totally agree with you, Ms. Longstreet. I was at the meeting, and I know that council questioned Ms. Zachary about 1,000 Steps being able to proceed without the $100,000, and yes, although not to the extent that if we had that $100,000, but to me, I look at that and it's safety and it's infrastructure. It's a very great example of a facility in our city that is in a state of disrepair because of our infrastructure needs, and that's that's what the sales tax increase was all about. And I agree, we should have let it go to the voters, let them make the decision. But at any rate, I think you all did a marvelous job with the budget, and I went and spoke twice on getting the positions funded, the new positions funded, and I think that's really important. The Carrillo Rec Center, hopefully to at least keep our revenue stream there steady, if not increase it eventually. And also the capital project supervisor is a very important position considering what we have going on here. So,
Madam Chair and Commissioners, and I apologize, I don't know if Ms. Longstreet spoke at the beginning of the meeting when you were sharing about different meetings that you attended, if she spoke at all about the council item yesterday on Franceschi House. So I did want to say, because I think it's budget related and because it will be a conversation coming back to the commission within the next 6 months. So as I mentioned in the email that I sent to you, we did take the Franceschi House back to City Council, and it really was primarily a discussion of the general fund, the inability to fund both a capital project and operations funding for the house. So council directed us to go back and provide come back with additional information on what the options are and the cost of those, and additionally extended the opportunity to the Pearl Chase Society to come back within 6 months demonstrating they can fully fund the updated cost projection for the rehabilitation of the house. Specifically related to budget, that it still takes a general fund commitment, a pretty significant commitment, to allow that construction to go forward. because the city is required to make some site improvements. And then on top of that would be the operational costs for the house. So I would encourage you to watch that presentation because it will be good background. When the presentation comes to you, you'll get a refresher on it, but I think it's good to for the commission to listen to the public comment and to listen to the council discussion because it was very thoughtful. And it's difficult because this is a historic structure, but ultimately it all comes down to the general fund fiscal challenges. When it comes to infrastructure, it's all the same thing. So it's not on our agenda for discussion. It is related to budget and general fund capital, and I just wanted to let you know that it will be coming back to you it'll be coming to you within the next 6 months to provide your input on that.
And some clarity for me, having even been there and I'm slightly confused. Staff will be working with the Pearl Chase Society to not only to see about funding, but to see about an alternate project that could go forward. Is that at this point, isn't that part of the whole EIR?
So what staff will be coming back with, we actually are just kind of fleshing that out to be very specific. Council asked for more information on exactly what a recommendation to demolish the house means. Demolishing the house would involve getting an environmental impact report. We'd have to do various historic structures reports. We'd have to do an inventory of all of the items that could be salvaged. It's a whole process, and plus the cost to demolish. Additionally, because it is a city structure of merit, part of the expectation would be that if you're removing that structure, you need to compensate with an alternative project on site that would recognize the contributions of Dr. Franceschi and others on the site. So that is the alternative project. So the staff will be coming up with preliminary cost estimates of what it would be and some general concepts of what an alternative project might be. It wouldn't be exactly what the project is going to be because that alternative project would involve working with the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Historic Landmarks Commission, and it would be a very long process. So, but it generally will be coming up with some ideas and a general cost estimate.
Because I think the media portrayed it that all that the city wanted to do was take the house down, and all that Pearl Chase wanted to do was keep the house up. And I think it's a much more cooperative relationship that we all have, and I just don't think that really got out there. And I appreciate that the feeling was not that way between the people, but it did.
Yes. No, the partnership between the Pearl Chase Society and the Parks and Recreation Department and the city is still very strong. And the challenge that the city has and the Parks and Recreation Department has is that there isn't city funding for the city to do their part. The Pearl Chase Society was well on its way for doing what it had said it could do, but the city didn't have funding. The general fund didn't have funding for that. So it's a more complex project. I don't want to spend too much more time on it since it's not specific to your agenda, but I did want to mention it as a budget item because it will be coming back to you in the next few months.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, we're on our last agenda item, which is number 9, update on upcoming summer concerts in the park.
And you have the information. Put the dates on your calendar. It'll be another fabulous concert series. So
looks like a great lineup.
Enjoy. Yeah, great lineup. Enjoy.
Okay, thank you. And with that, this concludes the meeting. It's adjourned. Thank you all.